Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Kella to discuss the future of the biker world that we love. If there is a future beyond Mayans, what could it be? A First Nine prequel? An Abel Thomas sequel? And what about those Charlie Hunnam rumors? Could Jax have somehow survived that accident? What could all this even look like? We discuss our wish lists in depth on this episode of Belated Binge, Sons of Anarchy. Let's do it.
The Belated Binge Podcast.
Before we get started, spoilers, obviously. Language, maybe? Shout out to Katie holding it down for the Bonus Binge Squad on Patreon. More on that later. For now, let me introduce my guest. If you consume fan content in the Sons of Anarchy space, you're going to know this name. It's Kella. First of all, thank you for being here. I've seen your stuff for a while. I think I've been following you since like 2021 or so. You're a huge fish in this pond, and I am Nemo with my gimpy little fin who can barely swim. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, first of all, Zach, thanks for the invite. First podcast for me today, so I think we will get the job done. And yeah, I think you're doing pretty fine. You're definitely not a Nemo, a little bit grown up, I would say. Let's see where it takes us.
You've built quite the following in this space. At last count that I had, your Sons of Anarchy fan page on Instagram was over 170,000 followers.
Yeah, it might be something like that. It has grown a little bit fast in the last month. To be honest.
Because I think I had seen it at like 144, and then just like last night before we started, in preparation for this, so I made sure I had a more accurate number. I looked and I'm like, holy cow, how did it go from 144 to 170?
It was insane. Crazy with the reels. Always when you have a little bit luck and one or two reels are going like in the million views, and then it's like you do 10,000 followers in 1 or 2 days. And I think that's what happened.
That's insane. But it's not just Instagram. You've got TikTok, which is over 100,000. You've got a successful YouTube channel, and you've got your personal brand, which isn't a joke either, and is like built around motorcycles. So first of all, kudos for building such a like mini empire around yourself and in this like Sons of Anarchy space, because it's a very niche area, and it's not an easy one to grow a following in. So first of all, like kudos for that. Do I have it right? Did you start in 2019?
I think so. Before this talk, I thought about it. Was it to 18 or to 19? I'm not sure. But I think into 19, I hit the 10K or something, because there was on a comic convention I got invited and met some of the Sons of Anarchy cast. And I think that was 2019, before all the COVID stuff happened.
It's wild to me because I was actually surprised by that. I actually assumed that you'd been at it way longer, particularly to get those kind of numbers. But in 2019 or 2018, like the show was long over with. So what made you get started then?
That's a really, really dumb story, to be honest.
I'm all for the dumb stories.
I was in my traineeship as a car mechanic back in the days, the job I did before all of the social media business stuff happened. And I was sitting in a car at work, trying to get the time over, not working, obviously, and scrolling to Instagram. At this time, I rewatched the show, and I wanted to like check what the guys are posting about the show on Instagram. And I thought, what the fuck? There are only like bad quality images and not really fan content, and it's not interactive. There are no groups that discuss stuff about the show. So I thought, why not doing an own account and start posting stuff with good quality and interact with the followers? And that's what I did.
So essentially you saw an opening and you just like jumped on it, like be the content you wanted to find.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
That's crazy.
It went crazy, yeah.
That's wild. I feel like I'm in a sort of, I'm not in the same situation right now with the podcast, but right now I believe that I am the only active, regular Sons of Anarchy rewatch podcast that's going right now. I waited until Theo and Kim Coates were
Yeah,
done with their Reaper reviews before I got started because I didn't want to try to compete with that.
yeah.
And when I've gone around looking, there's a really fun like YouTube React channel that's going through the series right now. I have seen some other podcasters that do like intermittent episodes about Sons of Anarchy, but as
Mhm.
far as like regularly posting, I'm kind of it right now. So I'm actually happy to be that like that one, but it sounds like you were that one basically before COVID started and everybody started making podcasts and content about things. You
Yeah.
had already kind of jumped onto it.
And I think the thing is, you have to keep in mind that there's always change. Back in the days, podcasts were really small, and I would say they are still in their kind of beginning. In 10 years, they will be so much bigger, and especially the rewatch or reaction stuff. I don't know how it is in America, but here in Germany, we have a pretty big scene on YouTube where the YouTubers react on each other's videos, and it's really, really big. They make tons of clicks with it, and I think like rewatching a show where already are many fans has huge potential for like views or interested viewers. So I think if you keep going and you keep the quality high and build your own kind of style to it, you have definitely the chance to build a big fan base.
I'm hoping that we carve out a little something over here, but people can hear about me on this podcast literally anytime. You spun that following on social media and the content that you were making with both the Sons and your own personal one into a job with Harley Davidson. Do I
Yeah,
have my facts
yeah,
straight?
yeah, kind of. It all went like I finished my traineeship as a car mechanic, and at this time the social media stuff always was pretty good. I think I was like 15K on my personal Instagram and maybe like 80K on Sons of Anarchy or something. And I didn't do TikTok at that time. It was only Instagram, no YouTube, no nothing. And I thought I just jump in the dark and quit my job and go fully into the social media stuff. And that's what I did like 1.5 years ago. And well, it turned out pretty good. I got a good collaboration with Harley Davidson for my personal content. And yeah, then I got the job as a social media manager and videograph for two Harley Davidson stores here in Germany. That's what I'm doing like 2 days a week. And the rest of the week, I'm kind of doing my own stuff for the social media part. And yeah, that's my job now, I would say.
That's wild. And that's like I guess over here we might call that like the American dream. It's like literally turning a passion into a career. We have this stupid cliche that parents always tell us, find something that you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
True.
And you have kind of embodied that in your own way.
Like some weeks ago, I thought like the same. I already thought about this American Dream stuff because like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I bought my first own Harley Davidson, and
Hmm.
it was a moment like like some years ago when I started the Sons of Anarchy stuff, or even further back when I first watched the show, I always knew one day I will get the driver's license, I will get my own Harley. But that I get the Harley through like the Sons of Anarchy content and the content of my own that came through the Sons of Anarchy stuff is like so ironic, man.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
It's like the show got you interested and also afforded you the ability to do it.
It's like a payback for the for
Yeah,
the for the show.
for the years and years that you've
Yeah.
dumped into the content.
Like
They're like,
keeping
"All
the
right,
show
here you go."
alive and then getting a Harley for it.
No, that's crazy. I think didn't you start like a little not little but like a build series with it? It's a Lowrider S, right?
Yeah. I just started. I'm doing it with some sponsors and building it on my own with my friends from Harley. And yeah, let's see how it looks when it's customized, right?
Oh, that's sweet. That's literally my favorite thing about motorcycles. I'm
True.
still on my Sportster. I'm going to be doing the upgrade. I'm either going Street Bob or Lowrider S. And the itch is bad. The itch is
Yeah,
bad, man.
I would recommend you go for the lowrider because you have the bigger engine.
If I did the Street Bob, I'd probably at least do the 114.
Yeah.
But still, even the newer lowrider S's have the 117, and we've lost every listener that doesn't actually pay attention to Harley Motors at this point.
Maybe. So maybe we should jump straight to Sons of Anarchy, no?
We should.
Yeah.
So our discussion topic today was sparked by a few things that happened within the world of Sons of Anarchy and our Sutterverse here. This isn't going to be an exhaustive list. This isn't everything that's gone down, but some of the high points and Cliff Notes versions would be that the conclusion of the Mayans MC spin-off show has, that thing's come to an end. It went 5 seasons on FX. It followed Easy Reyes and his brother Angel and their like Southern California Mayans a few years after the conclusion of Sons of Anarchy. We've had some rumors of Disney potentially parting ways with FX, which could potentially open the door for Kurt Sutter to possibly be reconnected with the franchise. And then we've also had Charlie Hunnam. This is the one that's really kind of like made its rounds, is Charlie Hunnam has mentioned the possibility of reprising his role as Jax Teller in some, let's call it a hush-hush, maybe possibly might be in the works hypothetical project that he has walked back a little bit, but I think we're smelling the scent in the air that this is most likely a reunion show, if anything, but we don't really know what that's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's it.
So all of this can be true, but there's still a lot of things that would have to happen for anything new to actually take place. But today, we're going to operate in this fantasy world where there's going to be new content, and someone making that content is actually going to care about what our opinions are on what content they should make. So we're going to share our wish lists, mine and yours, and ideas for what's to come in this beloved biker world. So we've got a few show ideas that we're going to talk about today, and they should at least sound semi-familiar to everybody. We've got the first 9 prequel series. We've got the Abel and Thomas sequel series that Kurt Sutter had planned originally to name samcro. Personally, I like the title The Sons better than samcro, but that's just me.
Yeah, me too.
And then we've got this third one, and this one's a little bit more like off the wall a little bit and in kind of direct reaction to Charlie, and that is, what if Jax survived the crash at the end of season 7, kind of like a future of samcro kind of story.
That's it.
So, do you want to go first, or would you like me to go first with my like wish list of what each of these shows? I figure we can do them one at a time. We'll start with first 9, and we can kind of just pass it back and forth here.
I would say we start with first 9. Yeah, that's the part where we have the most informations or leaks or rumors, I would say.
Yeah.
So maybe we could talk about this first.
Sure. So for me, first 9, it's, as we know, it's the prequel series to the Sons of Anarchy. It should sound super familiar to anyone that has absorbed content in this space. I know you've done videos on it. This was supposed to be a mini-series, a 9-episode mini-series thing that Kurt Sutter was planning to do, showing like the formation of samcro. For me personally, I would actually prefer this to be more of a full-on series as opposed to the mini-series. I just think there's more here that you could get into than just 9 episodes, unless those are literally like movie-length episodes.
Yeah.
Especially with the passage of time that you have to have. I know in one of your videos you noted that when Piney and John Teller actually formed Sons of Anarchy, Gemma would have been like 10.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So like there's a lot of time that has to pass before we even get to JT and Gemma getting together and having Jax, and then Thomas and everything else that goes on, which, by the way, get us on another podcast episode to talk about why John Teller has such a thing for young women. But so for that reason, I'm not as much into like the 9-episode limitation that you could have. I think you could do a full series here. I think you can show JT and Piney coming home from the war, getting their bikes, spend an episode or 2 just kind of showing how they how they do meet the rest of the guys and like form the club, but I really want to see the club actually in action. How, what pushback do they get when they put that California or bottom rocker on their cuts? What other dominant clubs are in the area? Like what confrontation does that lead them to? How do they form the relationship with the IRA in the first place? How does McGee go from being first nine to having that chapter in Ireland? I assume it was with that relationship forming with the IRA, and he posted up there to start a chapter there to, do protection runs and things like that. Get Gemma once she's actually of age, hooking up with JT, and then how did they form these relationships with the support clubs like the Devil's Tribe and the Grim Bastards? How did they link up with Unser in the first place? Like, how did that relationship form? We have the first war with the Mayans that we can go through. We can go through all of that. And then, of course, you start to see the turn that JT has in his heart and the creation of the book that he starts writing, the one that Jax is reading after the death of Thomas, and then the relationship with Maureen Ashby. We've got Trinity's birth, the way that Gemma twists up Clay and, he gets turned on JT and they literally, go after his life. And then they can end the series the way that they ended Sons of Anarchy with JT's accident out on 580, and maybe do kind of a montage of like Clay and Gemma happy together, heading to meet Piney in the club. Maybe it ends on like a funeral scene or something, and you've got this like final frame that's super dramatic and zoomed in on like Jax's face as he's crying with his little son's ring that he has, maybe a little Reaper Crew hat on backwards or something, and you sort of set up that our next venture is going to be this child, Jax's story. I feel like that has potential to be incredibly, compelling, and we can follow beats that we're familiar with, but we don't really know the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the thing is, there are two sides of the medal if we cut it down. The one side is we have a lot of content and we could like do a full show like Sons of Anarchy, 5 to 7 seasons easily. Really. There's so much. All you told us like in the last minutes, it's so much content, man.
Right.
But the other side of the medal is if we put all of that content in like 9 episodes, it will be really interesting 9 episodes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like today all the movies, if you go to the cinema, they are all like 3 hours. And back in the days, the movies were a lot shorter. But sometimes now the movies are not as interesting as back in the days when the movies were shorter. And yeah, that's hard to say. If the series is really good, then it could sustain everything with like 5 seasons. But sometimes it's better to do less, but with more quality. So I'm not really sure what is the right path to choose.
No, I see where you're going. Like I could totally be on board for that being a mini series. But like you said, you have to pack so much into it.
True.
That I wonder, how do you cut those episodes, and what kind of time jumps do you have to have in there?
Yeah, like that's crazy, man. That's really crazy. I mean, as a content creator or videographer, I was thinking about that too. I wouldn't know how to do it. Honestly, there's so much different stuff that you can't really put together in one episode that it's almost impossible to do it in 9 episodes unless you like skip many things.
Yeah, you got to skip a lot of stuff or skip a lot of time, because like we said, Gemma was like 10 when the club formed, so she has to. You got to at least go 8 years before she and JT get together, presumably, right? Like we're not condoning otherwise. Like that's not how this is gonna go. How do you get that far? Do you maybe do like episode 1? It's JT and Piney getting back from war. You literally have just like the formation of the club. And then you have episode 2 is like they've been doing stuff for 2 or 3 years. And maybe that's how you pass the time or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think that would feel really rushed, to be honest.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Because when I'm thinking about it, that can't fit in one episode. I think it would be so cool if we have like one specific episode where they are still in Vietnam. That would be so cool. And then the homecoming and all the stuff. Yeah, that would be so rushed if it's in 9 episodes.
Yeah, I agree. So what if we split the difference? What if it's like what they've been doing with those kind of like underground Marvel series that they've been doing for Netflix and stuff? Like I'm thinking
Mhm.
of like the Jessica Joneses and those kind of
Daredevil and
things.
stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like a
Yeah.
lot of those, I feel like they're basically creating them with the intention that this is going to be 3 seasons,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but you do 3 full seasons. It's not like season one of The Office is only 6 episodes long. Like you give it a full like 13 episode minimum
Yeah.
per season, and you do 3 of them. Then maybe you can figure out how to pass the time. You can squeeze in more of the story. I know some of the stuff that I brought up that I think is could be really interesting is not really that pivotal. Like, do you really need the Devil's Tribe and the Grim Bastards to be fleshed out, or do you just need to see them once and get a head nod? You know what I
Uh,
mean? Like, you can, I think, weave your way through here, and you have enough time for Gemma to become an adult before gets introduced. I personally, I don't want to see her as a kid.
no, that's boring for my opinion.
Yeah, like I don't want to see that at all. I want her introduced as a quote unquote legal adult
Yeah.
into the series after they've already been through some stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like
In the middle, like in the middle of all what happens.
right, exactly. I want her to be kind of like a almost like a turning point
Yeah.
where it's like they've been going down this path in this direction. Maybe they're getting the relationship started with the IRA. They're moving towards gun running, stuff like that. And that stuff is like signed, sealed, delivered, just got started. Maybe they have their biggest like shootout that they've ever been in, and all of a sudden Gemma gets introduced.
And
Eh,
I think it's really interesting to see how the relationships are built between like Gemma and Clay, for example. How
Oh
does it
yeah.
go? I mean, it turns out really dramatic at the end, but
Yeah.
how does it come so far?
Yeah, I know. That's why when it was originally described in whatever article I read originally,
Hmm.
where Kurt Sutter said like what his plan was to have Sons and then Mayans and then a first 9 miniseries and then do a sequel. That was kind of his roadmap.
Yeah.
When when it was described as the miniseries of the formation of Sons, my I guess worry or concern, for lack of a better way to put it, was that it was really just going to focus on the club, and it was going to end when the club started, and it
Yeah.
really wasn't going to be about the club, and we weren't
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
get any of the um like any of the points that they built in the Sun series, which that I would be incredibly interested to see. Like you said, how does Gemma start wooing Clay, and when do they start, plotting against JT, and when does JT start to really feel like the club has lost its way, or maybe his vision for the club has changed, and how does that dynamic start to shift? Like that to me would be incredibly interesting and compelling.
That would be all of the interesting stuff, to be honest. I think we all don't have to see how a club foundation is going. That's like, what the fuck, man? It's the relationships always. It's a drama series, so we need to see more from the people and how they turn, how the character development is, and that's what really is interesting about First Nine, in my opinion. But I see the biggest problem in 9 episodes with Kurt Sutter himself, because if we look on Sons of Anarchy, the original show, it's not really a fast-paced show. So Kurt Sutter's style isn't really fast-paced. So I can't really imagine a show from Kurt in 9 episodes with so much content in it. He's more like the guy of going slow paced, in my opinion.
No, you're right. And I mean, he made his bones on the Shield, which was the same feel. I've not watched all of the Shield, but I am familiar with it, and I know it went 7 seasons. It it was definitely in that same like gritty, I guess, anti-hero kind of a form. I think it's also funny that he played a messed up character on that show as well. He
Mm.
likes to write himself in, a part, and he's seems to enjoy bringing the twisted to life.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't, and I will admit I've not watched like The Bastard Executioner. From my understanding, that wasn't a particularly long-lived venture.
Yeah, me too.
I know he's got this new Netflix show that he's doing. I think it's like a Western type of a feel. So I'll
Mm.
be kind of interested to see if that's kind of that slow burn, kind of what you were talking about. Is it gonna how's that going to play out? I have this the one casting choice that I remember seeing was like a matriarch character, and I'm like, oh look, it's a Western version of Gemma.
Yeah.
Wonder what this is gonna be. But yeah, like that seems to be his style, right? And he was starting that with Mayans too before he parted ways with the network. It was very much a slow burn, and in my opinion, I don't think that his vision with Mayans, after reflecting on it, was really to tell necessarily the Mayan story like he did Sons of Anarchy. I think he was trying to tell a cartel story with that one, with
True.
kind of with a side of bikers.
100%.
And I think
100%.
and then it was, the show definitely changed when he wasn't a part of it anymore, and blah blah blah. We're not going to go down the Mayans road, but that's where, like, that's the feeling that I get about this first 9 as its like original intention, is like it's actually probably intended to be like a war show with a side of motorcycles, and they form a club at the end or something. Like, it's,
Mm.
we could potentially get it, and they not put on a cut until the very last episode.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I haven't thought of this yet, but you're right. At the start of my NSMC, at the first 2 seasons, I guess, I got
Hmm.
many messages on Instagram. How do I like the show and stuff like that? And is it like Sons of Anarchy? And I always say it the same. I always said it's not a really biker show. It's like more a drug war cartel show,
Yeah.
and that's what I felt. Honestly, I think Mayans changed in a good direction after Kurt was out. I liked the season 1 or 2 not as much as like season 3 and 4. But maybe, yeah, he had the biggest part in his hand. So don't know if he didn't produce it right, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, I
Yeah,
almost wonder too, like you said, he's more of a slow burn.
yeah. So maybe
And
his big coup was coming in like season 3 or 4.
yeah, yeah, I feel like when he left that show, we'll word it that way. The course correction was to try to bring it back to, no, let's get back to what Sons was.
Yes.
And you started getting more of that, like, we're gonna do shock deaths with characters in the club that and that sort of kind of worked, but sort of kind of didn't. Now we're gonna force, we're gonna have a war with the club that you're familiar with. We're gonna bring Sons of Anarchy to this, and we're gonna bring in a bunch of cameos from people that you are familiar with from Sons. Like, I feel like that got a little bit heavy-handed
Mm.
in my opinion. This isn't a dump on Mayans podcast or podcast episode, at least, but I could see Kurt probably had a very, very different vision for how that series was going to culminate, and it was going to take time to get there. And I think it was moving a little bit too slow,
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah.
before it got there. So I don't know, to bring it back around to your original point, I don't know how he would execute 9 episodes if there was any intention at all to pay off anything that was set up in the original Sun series. Like, I have to imagine that he didn't even want to touch any of that.
Yeah. If we get back to your idea with the like war kind of series, for me that sounds like pretty interesting because I haven't had that idea before and I didn't hear it anywhere. It is a good potential for a really good show, but it's not really what the Sons of Anarchy community wants to see, and that's the
I
same
agree.
with Mayans. And I think it wouldn't be like a good idea to do it, even with a good potential for a good show. If the fan base is not so much into it, it's like, yeah, there will be no big success, you know. They have to give more intel about all we talked before, like the stuff with Gemma, the IRA, and stuff like that. If the fans don't see anything about that, it will be a big disappointment for many people, even if the show is like a 10 out of 10 banger.
I completely agree. I think of it as almost like the Fast and the Furious franchise. I don't know if you're all that familiar with that one. That
Yeah,
was
I've seen
a,
all movies.
yeah, staple of my childhood.
Yeah,
But I think Tokyo Drift was a really good movie
yeah,
if they didn't put Fast and Furious in the title.
exactly. Yeah,
This first nine, if they wanted to do a really cool war movie and then end it with like the formation of a motorcycle club, putting it on its own separately with different characters and telling like whatever that story is could potentially be really good. But if you
true.
put John Teller in it and Clay Morrow and Piney Winston and it ends with them forming Sons of Anarchy and all it's like a war show and not a motorcycle club show, it's not gonna work.
Yeah, yeah, true. Because the fan base is interested in different stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. And
I
it's an
mean, yeah,
underserved
sure.
market.
Yeah,
I think one of the things that made Sons of Anarchy so successful was beyond the writing. The writing was obviously incredible. It
yeah,
was up there with, a lot of the best like gritty dramas that have ever been made from a writing perspective. But I also think that part of the interest is that you can't really find decent quality or any at all biker shows.
yeah. I can't really remember a single one, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean you can go back in the waybacks. You can see some like documentary style stuff about like Hell's Angels or Sonny Barger made a movie like way back when. I don't know what was
Hmm.
that, the 70s. Like there isn't. It's an underserved like content market. I don't know why there's not more biker stuff made with quality.
Yeah,
And it's like Sons just like ripped a band-aid off of a wound we didn't know we had. And it's now that's what you want. Like particularly if you were a fan of Sons and if it's going to happen in this world, like this has to be a biker show.
absolutely. It has to be all around this, and even more a biker show than Sons of Anarchy, because back in the days when the club was founded, all this rocker outlaw stuff was much more biker and wildlife than in the year Sons of Anarchy was aired.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be taking place alongside chronologically it would be like the 70s when
Yeah.
Hell's Angels were like, becoming mainstream in America here. And I know like they had a major influence on the Sons of Anarchy show. So I mean, you kind of have to tell that story and that stuff, those stories are wild. Absolutely
Yeah.
wild. Any documentary that you watch or any interview that you see with like past members that open up or whatever is
Mm.
those stories from the 70s 80s ish, like even the 60s of outlaw motorcycle club stuff is absolutely bonkers, and they would have to run parallel with that, so like they would have to depict that.
It was just a violent time, man. The guys came from war, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
They just bring the war back home.
and how many of them do we know, right? Like we know Piney, we know JT, we know Clay, we know McGee. Those are four members. Do we know the other five?
Yeah, there are some more. I know one guy. The actor is Tommy Gunn. I'm not sure how his character was named. I think Lenny the Pimp. Can this
Oh yeah,
be?
Sonny.
Yeah. I know that was Sonny's. That was Sonny's
Yeah.
character. But there was one more character, I guess, that was played by Tommy Gunn. He's also a guy from America in this whole biker culture. I have some messages with him on Instagram. but I'm not sure how his character was named. But it was also one of the members, and he was like in that first nine photo that I have in the thumbnail of my first nine video, and that's gone viral like back in the days. He's in that photo too, but I'm not sure about the character now.
So we've got 6.
Yeah,
We've got 6 of them. So we got 3 that are just mysteries, which
yeah,
obviously would need to be fleshed out. And they could honestly, they could kind of be your sacrificial characters in
yeah.
some ways, like, throughout the show, but make us care about them first, please. I do think there's a fascinating series here. I to your point earlier, I don't know how they do it in 9 mini episodes, and I don't know how you do it without it being about the club, about the bikes, and paying off some of the things that they set up in Sons. I don't know how you have a successful show within this world that's received well
Yeah.
without hitting those high notes.
Yeah, I remember one more member. We had a little bit too dumb, I guess. Otto was one of the first nine too.
Otto, I didn't realize
Yeah,
Otto was a
yeah, he
first
was.
9. I thought he was just like a long-standing member.
No, I'm pretty sure he was one.
Ah,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
okay. So, well, he's kind of a sacrifice. Him and Lenny, like, how did he go to prison and how did Lenny the Pimp go to prison?
Yeah,
Those would be super interesting stories.
yeah.
Those have to have their own episode.
Definitely. But we only have nine, so
Yeah.
maybe they do like 9 episodes, one about each member. That could be a potential, yeah.
There you
But
go.
yeah, it wouldn't be like that much satisfaction for me, to be honest.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. All right. So have we beat verse 9 to death?
Yeah, I would say.
All right. So I guess that leads us into we're going to do the major time jump. We go from prequel to sequel. And this is the one that was teased again by Kurt Sutter as supposed to be the story of Abel and Thomas. I really like calling this show The Sons as opposed to samcro. I think that you can make it a show literally about the sons and
Yes.
follow them on their journey. And it doesn't have to be Abel and Thomas only, because Opie also had a son.
That's what I thought too. Yeah.
I would love to see a series that is following those 3 boys from their perspectives and give them their own journeys, right? So Abel got the ring from Gemma, which completely poisoned Jax's plan of getting them away from Charming and not knowing anything about him or the club and hating him and all of that stuff. She killed that before he killed her. Abel has a ton of trauma.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Abel has seen too much. I
So
think
much.
Thomas was so young, so yeah, there's much hope for him, I would say.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure Abel will be going in kinda the direction of Jax sometime, and maybe like the son of OP too. But
Yeah.
yeah, it could be like a really, really cool character-driven show, because Thomas maybe goes in a completely different direction, like hating Jax or hating what he did, hating the club, hating maybe Abel too. And yeah, that could be a
That's
really cool dynamic behavior between those characters.
that's really interesting to me. I hadn't thought about Thomas like resenting or hating Abel. I had thought of Abel kind of having like like memories locked away that like his adolescent brain essentially like hid from him as like a coping mechanism for the trauma that he had. And then kind of see those getting unlocked and seeing him trying to navigate like, oh my gosh, did I really see that? Did that really happen to me? That kind of stuff, and kind of going on this like, who am I? What happened to me? Kind of a journey.
Yeah, that will
And then,
definitely be a part, yeah.
yeah,
Because even with his like kidnapping stuff, he can't really remember that, to be honest. But
no,
I think he will find out one day, and then he wants more answers.
yeah,
He will
exactly.
go back to Charming for that, because I'm sure Wendy and Nero will like try to hide a lot from him so he can live a normal life. But back in Charming, there are all the answers.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think Opie's son, in my little, world, I think he's still there.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think he has an interesting possibility of still joining the club, but then having to also come to grips with the damage that it's done to his family,
Yeah.
literally caused his family, and have to deal with that duality of like, I'm a third generation legacy in this. I literally know no other life, but it's also destroyed my father's life and my life, killed my mother, killed my grandfather. Like it has been nothing but pain
Yeah.
causing for him in his life, but he could like know no other alternative and still wind up in it. Like I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting character arc to explore as well.
I completely agree.
And like you said with Thomas, I think he does go on a different path, but I always kind of and maybe this is like cherry picking, but I always kind of pictured Wendy trying to like push Thomas towards medicine in
Hmm.
some way,
Because
as
of
kind of
Tara, you
like
mean
as kind of like her own little like,
legacy or yeah.
yeah, and almost her own like homage to Tara,
Hmm. Yeah.
like move him in that path, kind of in her memory or in her honor or whatever, to try to say like, he was going to be like you, kind of thing. I think it's interesting as hell that you said maybe he hates Jax and hates Abel, because I think there's something really interesting there. In my mind, he and Abel were like super duper close because of all this, but maybe they do have a split because Abel wants to go find answers and Thomas can't get further away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
That's
We
really
have to
interesting.
keep in mind it's like it is a show. It has to be like interesting.
Absolutely.
So we need characters that go in completely different directions. And if you have two brothers and you need different directions, that would be the easiest way to create like tension in the
Yeah.
show.
At some point, right, they have to come together. They at least have to come to the same place.
Yeah, that obviously true. Yeah.
Maybe I've given this some thought, but um, let's say Opie's boy is already in the club back in
Hmm.
Charming, dealing with his own, coming to grips on his own coming of age journey, if you will. Abel wants answers, so he goes back to Charming on his own.
Yeah.
Thomas does not. They have had their falling out or whatever it is, but then something happens to Abel.
And then Thomas goes, you mean?
Yep.
Hmm.
That's what brings Thomas to Charming, and then we can set forth on our journey of having our three sons that we follow
Yeah.
in
Hmm.
this biker world. Maybe Thomas, ironically, works at St. Thomas, and kind of becomes maybe he moonlights a little bit, filling bullet holes in Irishmen's buttocks, uh,
Maybe.
and that sort of thing for the club. And then during the day he's in a normal white coat. I don't know, but
Almost like his mom.
yeah, right, exactly. But I feel like he has to be a completely different character than
Yeah.
Tara.
Yeah, that's of course.
Like I actually envision him being the most dangerous of the three.
Could be, maybe.
Like like imagine this. We've got like Opie's boy, who is pretty much a mini version of Opie.
Hmm.
You know what? I hadn't even thought of it this way. But what if Abel and Thomas are almost like the two sides that Jax could have
Yeah.
during Sons of Anarchy? He had like one side that was very like quick trigger, violent outburst.
Completely mayhem side, yeah.
Exactly, just absolute chaos. And he also had this like quiet, meticulous, like murderous side
Yeah.
that was fully capable of doing just straight up torture to somebody before he killed them. Maybe Abel is more the wear your emotions on your sleeve, violent outbursts, still trying to deal with his childhood trauma and just flies off the handle. And Thomas is just like constantly calculated, just
I
super
mean,
cold, but then we'll just take somebody out back and you never see that body again.
we already see like that chaotic, violent behavior on Abel in Sons of Anarchy, when I
Exactly.
remember right. Like he did some, yeah, like stuff in his school, when I remember right.
Yeah, he beat up a kid,
Yeah,
and he like self-harmed. Like it was actually really, really difficult season to watch. Um,
definitely.
particularly when you've got this depicted by a 5-year-old. Like it's hard to even talk about what they showed that child doing on that show.
True, yeah.
And
He has definitely like some psychological issues, I would say.
for sure, for sure. So now, that's had 20 years to fester.
Yeah,
There's no way this dude's a stable human being.
definitely not. We don't know how all that what happened at the end of the show affected his mind. Yeah, we only saw what happened before, but with losing his father in that kind of way, I mean, he will know what happened. They can't hide it from him when he gets older. That will definitely make another big impact on his mind.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you've got a really cool show, right? Like you can take
Definitely.
it in so many directions. You can, I guess in my mind, I think it's really fun to have that dynamic of 3 sons that you're following. You've got the current member, maybe Abel decides to prospect, and Thomas comes, to and is running in parallel with them, but not a part of the club. I think it works with the current ending of Sons of Anarchy,
Mm.
and I think it also works if you needed to alter the ending for any reason, which we'll talk about in our next series that we're
Yeah.
going to discuss. But this is the part where I'm going to squeeze a quick little plug in. This is actually similar to a fan fiction that I started writing back in 2020 when I
Hmm.
found out that Sutter wasn't going to be a part of the network anymore, and I realized that the shows that we were promised probably weren't going to happen.
Yeah.
And so it was, early pandemic times. I needed a quiet, creative outlet. This podcast didn't exist. And so I started writing. I got 11 chapters into a sequel fan fiction following Abel, Thomas, and Opie's son. So I started writing this. I've got 6 chapters that I have shared with patrons so far. I am reading them audiobook style for Bonus Binge Squad patrons and above. I'm not holding them back from anyone. There's not like a content release schedule or anything like that. As soon as I get the chapter read and edited, that goes up on Patreon. So if you would like to listen to me reading those, check out patreon.com/belatedbinge.
You should definitely check this out. Sounds really interesting to me.
It's very similar to what we just described, although the thing that you said about Thomas like hating Abel, that would make me want to rewrite some things because I really really like that. I like squeezing that in there.
Maybe you should have talked to me earlier, man.
I know, right? We'd had to have talked in 2019, honestly.
Yeah.
um,
But
okay.
I'm completely with you. That's definitely the show, maybe because it's a sequel, that has the biggest potential. Because we can do everything what we want. It can be in all directions. There's so much potential, and I hope that one day there will be the chance of something like this getting created.
I agree. It's the one that I wanted most, which is similar to what you said when you said you were looking for Sons of Anarchy content, back in 2018, 2019, and you couldn't find any, so you started making it. That's
Yeah.
literally the same thought concept that put me into just starting to write it. I was like, this is the show that I was most looking forward to as the next thing. At this time, Mayans had like just started,
Mhm.
and and I was less interested in Mayans. I was less interested in First Nine. It was this sequel that I was most interested in. And I was like, crap, it's not even going to happen. Well, I want to know
Yeah.
what happens, so I'm just going to start writing. and I got 11 chapters in. And maybe I'll pick it back up, but we'll see how it does on Patreon and see what people think and where we can take the story next.
Definitely something cool that you did, because I think I'm pretty sure that you learned a lot writing those chapters.
It was really fun, to be honest with you, to try to weave in enough of the familiar backstory. When you're writing it, you're imagining somebody's reading it and may or may not have watched the original TV series, right? Like that's kind of the lens that I started writing it. So I wanted to at least have enough explanation and backstory and introduction of these characters as to like why they would care about their past and how it impacts them and how they got to where they are, but not just literally be doing a remember what happened in Sons of Anarchy and just like writing that out the whole
That
time.
would be not the best idea, because then you have
Right.
not the potential for new viewers to enjoy the show.
Right. I just thought it would be fun for patrons to get to experience it and hopefully enjoy it. And if it goes well, then, you know, it can get breathe some life into it. We can do some revising and finish out the story. But it was a fun needle to try to thread between laying that foundation for why it matters to these characters and then giving these characters their own story and their own thing.
I definitely think you should continue writing those episodes.
It's been fun. Like I said, I'm 11 in. I've read 6 for Patreon so far, and I'll keep churning them out. So that leads us into our third series that we were going to talk about today, and that is the most pie in the sky. It's the one that I think was the least planned by Sutter from the beginning. And this is the one where we have to have a ton of huge caveats from the beginning. And I think you and I agree in our interpretation and our, I guess, preferences. Jax Teller is dead.
Definitely.
And he
Hopefully.
should be left dead.
Hopefully.
Right.
Bro, that's the biggest discussion I've ever had because of all my YouTube videos.
Right.
I just made a video about exactly this topic with 3 scenarios, how an 8th season could have happened back in the days, not now, like directly after season 7. Like, one scenario is Jack survived, one scenario is like, he's dead, but he gets like flashback episodes or something like that. And yeah, there were a lot of scenarios. You can watch the video if you're interested. So I won't talk about that too much. But below that video, there were so many guys that said Jax is dead, and we can't do an 8th season now because in Mayans MC they talked about his dad, and we know he's dead, and stuff like that. And the people don't really understood that I was talking about an 8th season when he maybe survived directly after the 7th season. That's all way before Mayans MC. The guys, nobody like has a timeline in mind. So if Jax survived and we would get content of this, that would not be content that happened after Mayans MC. That's really important to notice.
That's really interesting to me too, because we actually went in different directions here.
Okay.
So let me see if I can sway you slightly. But I back to the caveats. When you have the actor who played Jax coming out and getting fans all excited and like teasing a possibility of returning as that character, we've got to at least explore some possible scenarios.
Yeah.
How he could possibly come back somehow. And I think that not showing us a body in the season 7 finale was absolutely intentional.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think they intended for Jax to survive or to continue the story, but I do think that they intentionally left like a crack in the door open just in case, let's be real, there was money to be made and Charlie was interested in bringing him back.
That's exactly what I've always telling with all the spin-offs. Everyone says there will be no first nine, there will be no Jax surviving because all the Disney and network stuff that happens and Kurt is out. But at the end, they are all businesses and they want to make the most money. And if there are so many fans that want to watch that, they are willing to pay like monthly rates for the streaming stuff, they will kind of do something to earn that money. And yeah, that's the point. It's like the Hollywood backdoor that is left open with the season 7 final.
Exactly. I mean, I mentioned Fast and Furious earlier. They're constantly coming up with ways to bring characters back from the dead
Yeah,
because there's still money to be made.
but please don't do it like that on Sons of Anarchy,
Right.
please.
Exactly.
Then I'm out. Then I'm deleting all the Sons of Anarchy pages, to be honest.
Yeah. So here's the scenario that I came up with to flesh it out a little bit. You were talking as if it was taking place immediately after season 7 ended, prior to Mayans and all of that. I'm thinking if it was to be made now.
Okay. But how?
Well, here's what I'm going to try. We're led to believe that he hit that semi-truck head on. Hence, the scene and the blood on the pavement that we got. But let's just say maybe, and I've seen this idea out there that he saw like a vision of Tara or something, or maybe he saw a vision of his boys or something like right before he hit the semi. And let's say maybe he swerved. Maybe the semi swerved. Maybe it wasn't a head-on collision. Maybe he just went down on the side of the road. He's still going to be bleeding. He's still going to have had a major motorcycle accident.
Yeah, definitely. He was like fast and no helmet and
exactly. Hence the blood on the road. Like you can still not completely cheapen your ending and still have a fairly vague, plausible ability for him to have somehow survived. Yeah. Okay. He just went on an absolute killing spree. Prior to that, he's being chased by like 1 million cop cars. Best case scenario, he's in prison forever. Yeah. If he doesn't die on the pavement. There's no way that the club doesn't find out that he's still alive if he's in prison. And in Mayans, we have multiple mentions of a dead Jax Teller. So how do you explain all that away? What about Witsec? New identity, immunity, government protection. They let people in his old life believe that he died in that accident, and he gets a new life for cooperating with law enforcement. Which doesn't sound like the outlaw way, but how many times did Jax actually use law enforcement to get what he wanted?
Pretty often, but never in like kind of like a red way.
True, but what he wanted most in that moment was for his sons to grow up away from Charming, not having the life that he had, and he wanted his club to be on the best path forward with as little bloodshed as possible. Those were what he wanted most in this moment, and he fully intended to make it his literal last thing that he ever did.
But what do you think, how would all of that came together? Because when he's working for the law enforcement, it would have at least some negative impact on the club. I mean, he could live a life with his boys, maybe with Wendy, far away from all of that. Even it's that like not really likely because we saw Wendy in Mayans, and then maybe that would be like different. But it must have a negative impact on the club, and that's not really something I would say is in Jack's mind. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. I don't think that he would intend for him to go live with them in this like fictional fairy tale scenario in Witsec. We know that he had some major dealings and knows a lot about multiple very, very big fish, let's say, for law enforcement. We know the Irish are still selling and running guns with the Mayans, so he didn't flip on the Irish. We know he wouldn't have flipped on his own club. What about Pope Industries?
I mean, he kinda eliminated this in like season 7.
He eliminated Marx as the head of it,
Yeah,
but
there's always another one to come. That's true.
right. Like, what if he was able to provide sufficient evidence on the criminal enterprise side of Pope Industries? Because if we remember, Pope Industries had a very large, successful business venture that was on the up and up and
Hmm.
built it through just completely sleazy, awful gangster shit on the criminal side. And that was how Pope made his name and made his thing. And, Marx took it over. And there's going to be somebody who takes it over after that. Let's just say, because that's the only scenario I could come up with. Because what Jax wanted, he wanted his sons away from
Hmm.
the life and away from him because he felt like he would poison them. He wanted safety. He wanted the club to be intact. He wanted to be the fall
Yeah.
guy. And this is one way for him to be the fall guy and still have a pulse.
Hmm. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's just a thought. And then it brings him back not in a season 8,
Hmm.
but instead he's coming back in the sequel series.
Yeah, that what I thought too about the sequel, but not really like it really coming back. I more thought like coming back in like flashbacks or like almost like a ghost, not being like weird now, but
Oh,
you know
that's
what I
actually
mean?
interesting.
Like
Yeah.
we talked earlier about the psychological stuff with Abel. And what if like the book that JT wrote was to Jax? Maybe are those flashback or ghost-like moments for Abel? Like he's talking to his father, and we really have like Charlie Hunnam playing that as Jax, and they are talking, but he's not really there. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. I hadn't
That's
given
what
that
I thought.
any.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that. Because, see, what I was thinking was he's been in Witsec, right? He's on the other side of the country, whatever. But we
Hmm.
have the internet now. And every once in a while, he checks in on like the news around Charming. And one particular headline comes his way, and he recognizes his son's name
Yeah.
in an incident that happens. So now
So
everything he wanted, them being away from Charming, them being away from the club being on the up and up, everything he did this for is gone. It all came
hmm.
crumbling. It failed.
And then he goes back. You mean?
Yeah, he has no he would not be able to stay hidden in
Yeah.
some secluded little, terrible life that he's made for himself and his self-loathing because that's what he did in
Hmm.
this scenario, right? Like he's living off of, TV dinners and has rats in his apartment in Rhode Island. Like he hates himself, but he's thinking that he did it to save his kids.
Yeah.
And then he finds out his kids are right back in Charming where he didn't want them. So he leaves, obviously, goes AWOL on the program. He's back in Charming and, how quick he can travel there.
Yeah.
And he becomes a supportive character in the story about the sons.
But do you think that like he will be really like going back and be present, or like going back and don't revealing himself to the people and trying to like manipulate from the outside?
That's really interesting because I think you have the opportunity to do both
Yeah,
in that
maybe.
scenario. I think you maybe start him as a silent participant off the radar,
Hmm.
and then maybe you have some really big like tension building moment
Then he gets like
where
revealed.
he's revealed, and maybe it's like maybe you get a peek,
Yeah.
right? Like maybe he's discovered by somebody and then they have to keep it a secret,
Hmm.
and then maybe the secret starts to spread just a teeny tiny bit, but then something huge happens and he's got to just say, fuck it.
Yeah, then
And
it's
like
like a
walks,
wildfire.
yep. And he just like walks straight up into a scenario and he's just like standing right in front of whoever the main foil is and in whatever
Mm.
moment that you've built, like, and that's the dramatic reveal, and it's like, oh shit. It's
Yeah.
one of those kind of things. It's not my favorite thing, let me be very clear, but it was the only thing that I could come up with in which you could tell me he survived and tell me he's stayed away for this long
Yeah.
in any kind of a compelling way that doesn't completely ruin what happened in the first 7 seasons of Sons or ruin the character or just make it a just shameless, awful money grab, terrible scenario.
I think it's a pretty hard thing to say, but I'm sure that won't be the way they would go with all of that. I mean, if we go back
I
to the
agree.
root to the root of all the rumors, it's like the interview from the show Shantaram where Charlie like talked about it, and
Mm-hmm.
then some little social media clips, like in Reaper reviews, he talked about it again, and for me, especially on the Reaper reviews clip, it sounded a little bit more like the stuff that the Harry Potter guys did with the reunion.
Yeah.
That's like something that's really likely. So he said, I think like maybe the whole crew will come together again or something like that. And that for me sounds really like a reunion stuff. And it would be cool, in my opinion, if they do like the same thing Harry Potter did with their reunion for Sons of Anarchy, like reviewing some old moments, talking about the behind the scenes stuff, showing stuff that has never be seen from the fans, like if it comes to behind the scenes. And maybe that can be like leaving the door open for taking part as Jax Teller in a sequel that maybe comes after that when we have more promotion for the franchise again through a reunion show like that.
I completely agree. The thing that always made the most sense when as soon as he opened his mouth was a reunion show,
Yeah.
right? The thing that made it a fun thought exercise, at least, the way it was kind of like spun to be like reprising the role
Mm.
or like coming back as Jax.
Yeah,
And
that
like,
was what was a little bit weird about all of that, in my opinion.
yeah, like a reunion show is he's Charlie Hunnam and he's going to come on
Yeah,
and talk about playing Jax, not actually, they're not going to get into costume and like get into character to do the interviews.
yeah, that's what confuses me about all of that.
Yeah, so it does, again, it leaves a sliver of like, and I'm sure some of it is just clickbait, let's be honest. Uh,
Yeah, obviously.
and I would watch the shit out of a reunion show. I would. I thought it made for just a fun thought exercise of like, okay, one of the things that I like to do on the podcast is just these like kind of off the wall what ifs. This was a
Yeah,
what if.
yeah, that's absolutely fine, and that's an absolutely interesting thought, especially how we like formed it now.
Oh, so how do we do? Any other thoughts that you had on a potential Jax? Like, what about a season 8?
I'm pretty sure there won't be a season 8.
I
I,
agree.
I had one scenario that is, for me personally, pretty interesting too, but that will never happen and that goes completely in like a different direction again. I talked about that in my video last week too. It was like a scenario that I got the idea from The Walking Dead a little bit. Like in The Walking Dead, I don't know if you saw the show. At the beginning, the main character, Rick Grimes, like woke up from a coma. And then all the zombie stuff happens. And what I was thinking about is what if Jax Teller had like a really hard motorcycle crash, but not the one in season 7, like way before season 1 started. And Jax Teller was in a coma, and everything we saw in the show was like just him processing the coma, his mind processing the coma. And then he wakes up and everything is totally different. Like Tara never came back. Wendy is no junkie. She raised Abel like 1 or 2 years. Maybe the stuff with Gemma and Clay is not like we saw it in the show, and everything is different, and we see how he deals like with the problem and the struggles of his memories of his fantasy that he had in the coma, or his dream, better said, and the reality, because there are so many false memories for him, and that would be like a really like mindfuck kind of show that would absolutely be interesting in my opinion. It goes like in the direction of Christopher Nolan movies for me, and it would be definitely interesting, but it wouldn't fit like in the Sons of Anarchy universe.
I agree. I don't think it fits in the universe, but I think it is an interesting concept of a show. Like, imagine that's happening.
Yeah,
Then,
everything is possible, man.
oh, I
It's
know.
Hollywood.
I know, but but he starts running into scenarios,
Yeah.
like not all of them because you obviously don't want to just like rewrite the same show, but
Mm.
like you get hints of deja vu moments
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where he's like, "Oh shit, we can't do that," and he almost like overreacts to things and take goes the opposite direction of what he went before because he knows that that was a huge mistake in his like dream
Yeah,
world.
exactly. And then maybe he has the possibility to really change the club in the right direction he always wanted, but never succeeded.
But then, of course, it has to go wrong.
Yeah, because it's a show. And we need a dramatic final at the end.
Exactly.
That's one of the biggest problems that I had in my video about season 8. Everything we can do to make a season 8 or let Jack survive or whatever he's coming back, how do we end it that it really feels final and it's not disappointing?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also like I could understand people who and I think this was one of the scenarios in your video too, so I won't give away too much of what you said. But like I can understand people also having some interest in just like the continuation of Sam Crow without Jax.
Definitely.
I personally I don't think they had the characters for that.
I think they had.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think there's a reason that if you do go on social media
Hmm.
and look up anything on Sons of Anarchy, it's like 99% Jax, right? Like it's like Jax carried the show
Yeah.
in a really, really big way. And I just don't think that they had anyone. I think Jax was just so unique in a main character for this club and for this show and for this series. I don't think that you could have just like taken that and put it on one of the existing members and then be able to hold it up.
If it comes to the characters and the fan base and who's like loved the
Hmm.
most and seen the most, after Jax, we definitely have OP, but he's dead. So
Yeah,
there's no possibility for him to carry anything.
right.
But I think the characters of Chips or Tig and especially the actors would definitely have the potential to carry like one or two more seasons.
I think that they were best in the roles that they had.
Yeah.
And the way, and I, this literally just popped into my head this morning after watching your video again.
Mm.
It was, in my mind, the way that that could have potentially been most successful is if upon Jax's exit, you introduced a new character
Mm.
that is just something fresh, new, and intriguing for us to follow and learn about.
Like a little bit the story like from Easy from my aunt's like
Yeah,
someone
very
coming
much.
in as a prospect and
Yep.
yeah, getting like to the president or VP status pretty fast and dramatic.
Well, yeah, and he doesn't even have to have that kind of like rise in the club necessarily because I think Tig and Chibs they can be their role within the club
Yeah,
for a while.
but
I
not
just
but not in the show. I get
right,
what you mean. They are the
right,
main characters in the club, but not the main characters in the show.
right.
Mm.
Exactly. I think they were best being support characters with main arcs, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. Like
yeah, I agree.
even when they had their big arcs, it was still a an arc that was happening alongside what Jax was doing. And I think you needed that Jax figure for those to truly shine the way that they did. I personally just think you'd have a decline in quality if you were just like, okay, well, Chibs is the new Jax now. And it's like, well, we already know a lot about Chibs,
Mm.
and we've kind of already seen him have an arc alongside our other arc. How are you going to somehow like trump up Chibs
Yeah.
and make him even more compelling and more interesting now? He's already done all of his
Yeah.
things. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's just it'd be asking a lot, not of the actor, like he's fully capable in
Mm.
that way, but you're asking a lot of the character
Yeah, that's
after
true.
what it's already been through. So that's where I was like, if you could introduce somebody, and maybe it's somebody that is familiar to us in some way, like I don't even know what that would be, but like somebody's got some kind of tie to the club, and they come in as a prospect, as you mentioned, and they've got to tie somehow to a family somewhere somehow. I don't know,
Mm.
but like some kind of familiar thread that could then have their own journey, and Chibs and even Tig could like help guide them on that journey.
But I think what would be definitely interesting, maybe not on Chips, because we know a lot of Chips' backstory, and
So
we have
much.
seen like parts of it because all of the Ireland,
Hmm.
Scotland stuff. But like for guys like Happy or Tick, there's a lot we know about them, but we only got teased, especially Tick. There's so much behind this character that we have never seen, and that's really interesting, exactly like on Happy. And that could like kind of get the bridge a little bit to Mayans MC and everything that happens there. But a character that not many people think about, but I think had big potential for more screen time was Rat Boy.
It's really funny you mention that because I give him a big role in the fan fiction, but I agree with you. I think it also depends on what your goal of the show is.
Hmm.
If your goal is to bridge from Sons to Mayans,
Yeah,
then I think you're absolutely right.
yeah,
Chibs, Tig, Happy, like they can carry that with not a lot of issue because you don't have to have a super long arc planned.
exactly. Yeah,
But if your plan is to essentially kick off what would basically be another like 7 season type of a series, essentially starting your sequel there
yeah.
or
That
whatever,
wouldn't be possible with the characters.
yeah,
That's yeah, clear
yeah,
thing.
you need something new to bring to the table to follow their journey, I think.
But then I say better do a spin-off.
Yeah.
That's not how the show is supposed to continue, in my opinion.
Yeah,
When
I agree.
they would have done an eighth season, then only like really one season, maybe two,
Yeah.
maybe one season where they like yeah, show a little bit more about the characters we haven't seen much about yet, and exactly like guys like Red Boy, maybe how he becomes full member and his arc a little bit, and then a second season like how it all really ends, like fading out into
Hmm.
Mayan's MC a little bit, and then Sons of Anarchy's done.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only thing that could potentially have legs in the timeline just doesn't quite fit
Mm.
is Opie's son.
Yeah,
He's just not quite old enough.
yeah, true.
But if he was, right?
Then it
Like
would
if
be really, really interesting thought. Yeah.
yeah, like if he became a prospect and then you make him the new Jax or whatever, like that could be something very, very compelling. I just don't
Mm,
think he's quite old enough because he's probably like 6 or 7 in season one.
maybe, yeah.
So he's maybe 15 by the time it all ends.
I think that is something that can only happen like in the timeline way after my NCMC.
Right. Like you can't bring a 15-year-old into Sons of Anarchy. But
Yeah.
if he was say 13 in season 1 and he's, 18, 19, 20 when it all ends,
Mm.
then you've got something. But
But then
we don't
I
have
would
the
say we would have seen more of him in the original
I
show
agree.
too.
Yeah,
When he's like that age, then they would have made a real character of him. Now he wasn't really a character. I don't know if he like said one real sentence in the whole show.
exactly. And I think you kind of need that, right?
Yeah.
Like I think the new whoever that new mantle was gonna go to, it would have to just be somebody that like we have a reason to care about them from the jump, but that we
Hmm.
don't really know.
Yeah.
And so that's why his boy, came to mind as a potential there. We've already kind of seen enough from Rat Boy to kind of disqualify him, in my opinion, on that.
Maybe. Yeah.
So like to me, the only way that scenario works is if it's somebody we don't know really anything about, but like we recognize a name
Yeah.
or we like recognize
A
a
connection
family
to
tie.
yeah, a
Exactly.
connection
Yep.
to someone else of the club or of someone in Charming or stuff like
Right.
that.
Right. It's somebody that we connect to, so we're like, "Oh, I want to root for them because of their connection to X, but
Mm.
I don't know who this person actually is."
Yeah.
And that's the intrigue.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's probably why we didn't get it.
Maybe.
And it was always intended to be 7 seasons. That's why I think season 7 was so rushed.
At the end, I have to say it's good how it ended. It's a final ending. I
Yeah.
hope Jax is dead and they don't bring him back. Please do a
I
reunion
agree
show.
with
That
you.
would be absolutely sick, and everyone would watch that, and we all have good content about that.
Hell yes.
But please don't bring back Jax.
Yeah.
If you do, if anyone hears that ever from like the network or Kurt Sutter or someone else, if you do bring him back, then only like for the sequel in like how I mentioned with like Abel maybe talking in a ghosty way or something, but don't bring back Jax alive, please.
Don't ruin what you already built.
Yes, exactly.
I think we did pretty good.
Yes,
I think we did well. We've got
same for
3
me.
series that we could conceivably have, 2 that we would prefer, and and if anyone at the networks want to hire us once this strike is over to help guide these stories, our phone lines are open.
Definitely. We would also take a place in the cast, and yeah, we could do like everything.
Sure, I would totally be down.
I
You
can bring bikes and no problem.
I'm totally down for it. The only downside that I have is I don't totally fit the aesthetic of the original cast. Those dudes
Mm,
were huge.
yeah,
They were giants. I heard Theo Rossi say on Reaper Reviews that he's 5'10",
yeah.
and Juice looks like a tiny little boy.
The good thing is, I definitely know I'm way bigger than Theo. I met him in 2019 here on a Comic Con, and I remember that I was looking a little bit down.
I
But Ryan was absolutely a giant. He was so big, really.
Monsters. Just
Yes.
just huge human beings. I am not. I'm a very small human being. So you're going to have to write my character as like some little dude that's like really crazy or
Like Chucky.
something. Yeah, just like the only way somebody my size gets into that world is they have to have some really 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 scary demons.
Yeah. Do you mean Coco?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Mhm.
would have to be a Coco type character for me
Yeah,
to play just cuz I'm
definitely.
so short. But I do
Yeah.
it. I can ride. We can do that. Anyway, dude, seriously, thank you for coming on the podcast. This was a ton of fun.
My
Um,
pleasure. Same for me.
you're welcome back anytime. And for now, plug literally anything that you want to plug.
Yeah. At the end, if you're just interested in Sons of Anarchy stuff, you can check out my pages if you haven't. Leave a comment on some of the YouTube videos and let me know about your thoughts on the spin-offs. I have videos about pretty much all of we talked yet. And then I'm interested to read what you guys say, how maybe the Sons of Anarchy universe could continue. And if you're interested in Harley Davidson content or myself, feel free to check out my personal Instagram. And definitely consider about the Patreon membership for the Belated Binge podcast, because you definitely need to read his fanfiction.
I agree. And there's going to be links to all of those in the show notes that I'll put. I'd also love to hear your opinions on these scenarios and these different shows. You can leave a voicemail on my website, belatedbinge.com. There's a leave a voicemail icon right there on the right hand side of the screen, and links to everything else from there, social, Patreon, and all of that. Like I said, all links will be in the show notes. As always, thanks for joining us. And remember, life is short. buy the motorcycle. When you do, wear a helmet. Dress for a slide, not the ride. And be sure to bring Belated Binge along for that ride.